Okay, well, let's get started. Thank you everyone for joining us for this educational session on the ways that data from the US Census Bureau, including the decennial as well as the American Community Survey, can be a very helpful tool in terms of building learning communities that cross sectors to solve problems that we face and to do better advocacy around the engagement of data. I'm Karthik Ramakrishnan, the founder of a lot of things, including API Data, as well as Census Legacies. So can we go to the next slide? We have a packed agenda today, so I'm going to try to be as brief as possible. So Census Legacies is a growing network of funders, nonprofits, businesses, government agencies, and census coalitions from around the country that instead of dismantling the kind of coalitions we had and the kind of learnings that we did together, to use it as a foundation for the future. Next slide. Some of the key insights of Census Legacies are that trusted messengers are essential. So many of you on the call have done this work and continue to do the work in terms of being trusted messengers. Another key insight is that community input needs to be all-inclusive. That was part of what was remarkable about the census effort. And then finally, this notion that solutions need to be co-designed with community organizations as equal partners. Next slide. Many of you are involved in the results of the decennial census, and it's important in terms of redistricting. So that work is current and ongoing. Next slide. The insights in terms of trusted messengers was also used in a lot of places to rely on the same set of partners for vaccine outreach, as well as vaccine planning and distribution. Next slide. We are hopeful that the kind of insights that came out of the census work can also be useful when it comes to community involvement and community influence, when it comes to economic development and regional planning, when it comes to workforce. There's still a long ways to go. In many counties and other parts of the US, people still think of economic experts as those that are related to the business community and not necessarily those that are advocating for communities of color and low-income populations. Next slide. This just shows you, some motivations for how communities of color face disadvantage when it comes to a lot of these areas that matter at the regional level. Next slide. Another potential legacy from census efforts is the kind of leadership that many community organizations had when it comes to not only advocating for communities, but also for planning and outreach. And we're hopeful that those who played a leadership role in census outreach can also continue the momentum to make sure that we improve when it comes to diversity and inclusion and equity when it comes to boards and commissions at the local and state level. Next slide. Now, a lot of what we're going to focus on today is how census products and tools can be useful in terms of advancing community needs and interests. But it's also important to know that advocacy is important to get the federal government to improve on the kind of products and tools that it puts together. And we're going to have a call to action that we'll mention to you as part of our call today, as part of our training today. Next slide. More generally, the hope is that with the various complete count committees throughout the country, that those can be used as resources of various sorts. Next slide. One is this fundamental notion of data-driven collective problem solving. So to build learning communities where we not only build skills, but also relationships that can be useful for collective problem solving as well as policy advocacy in the future. Next slide. And one of those ideas is something that we surfaced is this notion of an evergreen community advisory group. So to not only think of inclusion as something you need to do every 10 years. So if you go to the next slide. Right, so this kind of boom and bust cycle, maybe there's an animation there, so just continue, please. Right, we think about boom and bust cycles when it comes to civic engagement dollars. Well, we're seeing these even bigger boom and bust cycles when it comes to census outreach dollars. They come only once every 10 years. So all of a sudden you have community organizations that are reached out to, that they have resources, that they might not otherwise have, but then it disappears. So we want to move away from that cycle. Next slide. Another reason why these community tables, these inclusive tables, are important in the here and now. So instead of just looking at 2030, if you just look at 2021 and 2022, there are billions of dollars that are going out from the federal government to states and localities. And it's important for these equity coalitions, these inclusive coalitions, to be aware of the kind of data that can be used to more effectively advocate for resources coming to our communities. Next slide. More generally, the work we do here as part of our DNA framework, we're going to be talking a lot about data today, but importantly, to make sure to connect data with narrative change and action. Next animation. So more generally, we just say, what's your DNA? So what's your plan for data? What's your plan for narrative? What's your plan for strategic action to advance the needs of our community? So in that vein, next slide. We do have a call to action that we will be pushing out after this training today, which is one, to attend the Census National Advisory Committee meeting, which is tomorrow and Friday. This is something that we mentioned last time at our training with you. It's the kind of meeting that on the surface will probably look very boring or maybe confusing to a lot of you. But you have to trust me that this will be time well spent, because the kinds of topics of discussion include whether or not and when detailed ethnicity data on our communities from the decennial census will be released. That is on the agenda tomorrow. On the agenda Friday, if you go to that link and you click on the PDF, will be discussion of the challenges for the current population survey, which is critical for information on unemployment and other labor market data. The American Community Survey, which, as we know, in 2020, the one-year file will not be released. There's a discussion of what those challenges are and what the U.S. Census Bureau can do to improve outreach with various communities, including communities of color. And finally, there's a public comment period. So you will have the opportunity there to express to the Census Bureau. And these are some of the suggestions we have, but you can advocate on anything that you think is important to make sure that the Census Bureau continues to serve our communities and is able to have the resources necessary to ensure an accurate count, not only on the decennial, but also the American Community Survey. And finally, there's a sign-on letter from the Census Project to ensure permanent funding and increased funding for the American Community Survey, which we'll be sending out as well. The deadline for that is today. So that's the call to action. I'm now going to turn it over to Carla Lopez Del Rio, who will talk about the survey results from last time and introduce Armando Mendoza Grijalva from the U.S. Census Bureau.
Thank you so much, Karthik. My name is Carla Lopez Del Rio. Welcome back to those that joined us on October 20th for our info session. And to those that you have not joined us before, we hope that this is extremely helpful to you, as it has been extremely helpful to us. So I just wanted to share the results of a survey that we shared at the info session last time, where we discussed the importance of the ACS and decennial data. Today we get to see the data and show you how to access it. So on the next slide, we are going to see, we've asked the question, where does data you use come from? And we did see that the U.S. Census Bureau data is one of the largest bodies of knowledge that we tap into. And that's why ACS is so important. We also asked directly from ACS how many people used it. So we had 75% and 60% using this information. So we're hoping that what we're sharing with you today will expand that usage, and that the Census Bureau at least gives you that baseline, looking for moving forward. On the next slide, we asked the question, how often do you use the census data? And 50% of people said occasionally, with 25% of people saying always. So it sounds here that it's not just about data users, but the difference between data users, those power users versus the intermediate users. And we have tools for all of you. All of you have access to census tools that have that level of different expertise. On the next slide, We asked about how often do you use American Community Survey data. We see very similar results to 42% and 17% using it always or occasionally. So we're glad to see those numbers. And then on the next slide, the last results, where do you use your, what do you use your American Community Survey and decennial census data for? And one of the biggest ones that we see here is policy engagement and or advocacy, followed by program design and including services, right? Designing services. Also notably voting rights and member engagement. So it's used in so many critical ways by our community that this is an important and underutilized asset that we want to change that around. So on the next slide, what we're going to ask is we're going to do a pre-survey, a very quick pre-survey. We're going to put on the link, a link in the chat that you're going to click. And as soon as you click it, it'll take a minute. And we're going to see the responses that are coming through. So I'm going to share my screen with those responses. And please start, take a minute and take this quick pre-survey quiz. And the link should be in the chat, right? The link is at the bottom of the presentation. So let me see. Okay, here we go. All right, we have 4 responses. Has your organization ever contacted the U.S. Census Bureau Data Dissemination Training Program? We see that it's either a no or I'm not sure. So we're glad to have Armando here. How comfortable do you feel using census data? We have a 4. So let's see if we can improve that a little bit for you, if that confidence can go up. Okay. So we had 24 responses so far. We can come back and look at the responses later again as you continue to answer. But now I would like to pass it on to Armando Mendoza, a data dissemination specialist that has been extremely helpful and has been a big advocate for making sure that the information gets back to the communities that work so hard for the count and that are now raising awareness about the American Community Survey, how important it is, and what we can do about making sure that we always have this data and that we can grow this data and make it more usable and actionable in our communities. So Armando, I'm going to pass it on to you, and I know you're going to share your screen. So welcome.
Thank you, Carla. Give me a second to share my screen. I still haven't got the button yet. Let's see. There we go. So good morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Armando Mendoza. I'm a data dissemination specialist with the U.S. Census Bureau. I have a short presentation, and then we're going to go and tell you a little bit more about the data dissemination program. The data dissemination program was implemented right after the decennial census in 2010. So as Karthik mentioned, just like he is leading that effort, instead of dismantling the partnership efforts that we had during the decennial census, the Census Bureau recognized the need for an evergreen program to provide training to private and public organizations how the Census Bureau, the data dissemination program specifically, show how to access data, show the value of the decennial census in the ACS data, and the over 100 other surveys that the Census Bureau conducts. So you're going to learn a little bit more about your local support wherever you may be in the country. And then I'm going to have a high-level overview of some of the data tools. In light of the time, we have implemented a number of data tools over the past few years. So this is just designed to give you a brief overview of the redistricting data, how you can access it, and then how you can access a very valuable tool that, in my opinion, is called the narrative profile from the ACS. And then I'm going to provide again, contacts for people around the country that can provide support to you either by phone, by email, and provide a webinar. So the Data Dissemination Training Program works with a number of internal and external data dissemination staff, provide training to anyone really interested in accessing census data, data tools and apps, and the programs that the Census Bureau offers. So we provide a number of, we focus in a couple of areas. So we provide free presentations and trainings tailored to the customer's needs. We have in attendance a number of organizations with different needs, but we can schedule, like free of cost, either training or a workshop. We also are able to respond quickly by contacting us at 1-844-ASK-DATA or sending an email to census-askdata, census.gov, and then the call or the email will be routed to the specific data dissemination specialist in your area. We facilitate webinars for programs across the Census Bureau, and our team of experts can help conduct webinars for audiences outside the Census Bureau as well. And I provided an email. And we can develop and manage Census Academy. We're going to show you a little bit. That's one of the tools that I'm going to show you in the live demo. And they're responsible for the content of the virtual training hub of Census Academy. The data dissemination staff, as well, all the subject matter experts within the Census Bureau, develop content that is housed in the Census Academy, which again, I'm going to go in a minute. Because of COVID-19, we are restricted to provide data services that were suspended in person, but we have been conducting over the past 18 months since the COVID impact via webinars. So in 2013, the Census Bureau consolidated 12 regional offices into 6. The regional offices are responsible for data collection, data dissemination, and geographic operations. We have an office in Los Angeles, which I base in Orange County in California. We have an office in Denver, Chicago, Philadelphia, New York, and Atlanta. I'm going to not spend a lot of time here, but these are the contacts that can provide assistance and training for you at each regional office. I'm going to provide a copy of the presentation so you don't have to take a number of notes, so you can get in touch with the person that is responsible for your area. As I mentioned, I cover the Los Angeles regional team, and I'm in charge of Orange County, San Diego County, Riverside, San Bernardino, and Imperial County. As you know, we released the apportionment data in April, and then we released a couple of data products. On August the 12th, we released the redistricting data on a legacy format, which was a little bit difficult to use if you're not a frequent data user. However, in September 30th, we released the easy to use format, which I'm gonna be demonstrated on the live format in a minute. Other data products are scheduled to be released in 2022. We don't have the exact dates yet, but I did provide a link on the planning for upcoming 2020 census data products that Alexandra Cross of the Census Bureau Population Division conducted on September 30th on how you can compare the proposed 2020 data tables to the published 2010 data tables. Again, this is a link directly to the webinar, and I encourage you that if you're interested in understanding how those tables are going to be related between the two data products, I encourage you to listen to the recording webinar. So I'm going to go live and show you a couple of tools. Again, this is not designed as a full training session. Rather, it is an overview of some of the data tools that we use. Here's the data, here's the census.gov landing page. You probably know we have a diverse audience, and I guess we have a number of people that access census data frequently. This page is constantly being changed, so you need to be abreast of the changes that are happening in the Census Bureau. I'm going to show you the hub of the Census Academy. To get to it from the census.gov, you hover explore data and go directly to the Census Academy. Here you're gonna find a number of resources. So you can look at data tools, you can look at some data and science visualization, population and housing characteristics, some economic statistics. We have comprehensive courses addressing the redistricting data, whether it's in the legacy format or the easy to use format. We have a number of data gems. These are short videos that tells you in a 2 to 3 minute short video how to access specific data that you may be interested in. And then we have specific courses on a number of subjects. And then we have the schedule upcoming webinars. So again, this page is a huge resource for you, and you may have heard about it, you may have not. Just like the American Community Survey, since it was implemented in 2005, many people have not heard about the ACS and the rich socioeconomic and demographic information that it offers. Along the same way, maybe you have heard about the data dissemination and training branch, maybe you're not. This is one of the tools that are a significant resource for you. I'm going to return to the landing page and show you a tool that is called Quick Facts, again, that you may have used in the past. It lives here right now, and as I mentioned earlier, sometimes we have a tendency to change. However, I'm going to show you where this tool resides permanently. To get to Quick Facts, you simply click here. This tool is very useful. The US is the default. However, you can use the search box to compare up to 6 geographies. I'm going to type Boston. So Boston City, Massachusetts. I'm going to deselect the United States and then maybe add Philadelphia. So Philadelphia. Sorry, I'm not the quickest type. So here you're gonna see that we're looking at a table right now, and we have this data, including the results from the 2020 census compared to the 2010 census. And then we have other social demographic information, such as age and sex, race and Hispanic origin. So you can determine here the percentage of the Asian population. This is a bit confusing. This data comes from different sources. This data is from the annual population estimate. So it's important to note that. Also, this tool is available for geographies that are 5,000 or more. There's some other population characteristics, some housing characteristics, families and living arrangements, computer and internet use, education, health, economy, transportation, and some business information. Again, this is a very useful tool that you can compare up to 6 geographies, and you can mix and match. So the geography levels are state, county, city, or zip codes. I'm just going to leave this for demonstrating purpose is the 2 geographic selections. You can also map the data by clicking on the map icon. And this is the map is going to refresh and zero in and give you the boundaries of the 2 selections that I made. From here, you can select a fact by using this drop-down menu. So for example, you can look at the Asian alone population. System is going to refresh. When you click on any of the geographies, including the 2, it's going to tell you that the Asian population in Boston is 9.7%. From here, you can look at other geographies. So for example, you can add Quincy. Look at the fact, you can add it to your selection. Boston, obviously, Philadelphia is obviously a little bit further south. And then you can actually look at the chart. And the system is going to refresh, and it's going to give you additional information for other cities in Pennsylvania. Or you can look at a dashboard where you're going to have the table, the map, and the chart in one place. And then finally, there's a couple of useful tools here. You can print this data. You can download it into a CSV file. You can email this link. So once you do all your selections, you can email this this page directly to somebody so they don't have to go through all the selection process. And you can share this information on a couple of social media outlets like Twitter and Facebook. I'm going to return to the main page, and then I'm going to show you, if you're a frequent data user, you probably know. So I'm going to go to Explore Data Main. You probably already know that datacensus.gov replaced the American Fact Finder. And this is a great tool. However, it's not reached full parity with the American Fact Finder. However, it does have some great features that were absent on the American Fact Finder. So these are all, this is a landing page for all the tools. I mentioned earlier that perhaps quick facts may go away when we replace and we refresh the landing page for the Census Bureau, but this is where quick facts lives permanent. I want to show you some of the data for from the redistricting data. I'm going to get here. You see it's a very clean page. You can either use a quick search, so you can type any geography. You don't have to understand all the lingo from the Census Bureau. You can type redistricting. It's going to bring you to redistricting data. The default is the United States. But in this case, I want to focus in a couple of states and the counties within those states by using the advanced search. So advanced search, I want to look at a geography, and I want to zero in at the county, level. You can either select all the counties within the United States by selecting this box, or you can focus in, say, a couple of states. In this case, I'm going to type Oregon. And here, the same process. You can either select a few counties within Oregon, or you can select all the counties within Oregon. Then I'm going to look at another state, say Montana. And again, same process. I'm going to select all counties within Montana. Here are my selected filters right here. Then I'm going to focus on the topics. When you click topics on the left pane, and I'm going to look at, let's see, where's my years? So I'm going to look in years, and I'm going to select 2020. So my filters are all counties within Oregon, all counties within Montana, and then I'm going to click search. I'm going to click on race. It's going to give you the tables. One of the nice features of datacensus.gov that was absent on the American Fact Finder is the ability to select just portion of the table. So let's say that you want to select just this portion of the table. You hold down your left key on your mouse, you select the area, you right click, and you copy with headers, and you can paste this information on an Excel spreadsheet. Or you can export the entire table by clicking here, and you can either have it exported into an Excel file or a CSV format. I'm going to customize the map and show a couple of ways that you can do a visualization of the data. Right here, we have two geographic selections, 1 year, which is the data product is right here, the 2020 redistricting data. I want to map a couple of the data that is available. So I'm going to click on this map icon. System is going to refresh and is going to zoom in all the counties within the 2 states that I've selected. The total population is the default up here. We have 92 geographic levels, so 92 counties within the 2 states. And this is data again from the redistricting data. And in here, you can toggle the data that you want to display. So for example, you want to do a thematic map for the Asian alone population. You simply click on that. System is going to refresh. The darkest area, like Multnomah County, I believe, and Yamhill Hill County in Oregon are the heaviest population in terms of Asian alone. However, you can display any of the data that is available. So you can look at American Indian, Alaska Native for the 2 states. System is going to refresh and give you that information. There's a couple of base maps that you have. Here's the light map or the street map. When you zoom in, you'll be able to see actual cities within the counties, within the states. Okay, I'm gonna go back and show you another data product that you may or may not be aware of. I believe there is an incredible value to the American Community Survey. So I'm gonna switch from the decennial census data to the ACS, which again is a resource of socioeconomic and demographic information. The easiest way to get to the narrative profile, which is a data product that I want to show you, you simply come to census.gov/ACS, which is the acronym for the American Community Survey. This is going to bring you to the American Community Survey landing page. This is where you can find everything about the ACS, the questions that we ask, methodology, the technical documentation. You can get updates by subscribing and using this link. But the one that I want to show you lives here under data, data tools. And I want to get to my, they just refreshed this. So I'm sure you can relate. We're constantly changing things. Where is my narrative profile? Huh. So data profiles is under data profiles. And the one that I want to show you is called the narrative profile. Again, this is a great tool. It's going to bring you here. Is always going to have the default of the latest data. In this case, it's 2015, 2019 5-year estimates. In December, we're going to be releasing, I believe, not sure because the impact of COVID, the 5-year estimates are not, they were not impacted as much as the 1-year estimate. So I believe the plan is to release the full data for 2016 to 2020 sometime in December. You can go back in time to look at other vintages and do comparisons and see how communities have changed. And the geographic levels available are nation, state, county, county subdivision. A place includes incorporated places and census designated places, which are unincorporated cities, census tracts, zip code tabulation areas, metro and micropolitan statistical areas, American Indian, Alaska Native, and Hawaiian homeland. I'm gonna select a place, and let's say that I want a place in California where I'm based, and then I'm gonna select a place in California, say Huntington Beach. Once you make your selection, you click on Get Narrative Profile. System is going to refresh and is rendering the profile, which is a great tool because it describes the statistics in a non-technical way, and it also includes some graphs and charts included. So here's households and families, the percentage of married couples, and other household composition, marital status, grandparents and grandchildren, the nativity and foreign-born population. You probably are aware that the citizenship question, the Department of Commerce, which is the umbrella organization overseeing the Census Bureau, wanted to reintroduce the citizenship question in the 2020 census, but it wasn't. It is asked on the American Community Survey, and it's important to note that this has nothing to do with legal status. We simply ask, were you born in the US, yes or no? Then you become part of the native-born population. And then if you're not, you're foreign-born population. And then part B of that question, have you become a naturalized citizen, yes or no, which is right here. So 64.6% of the foreign-born population were US naturalized citizens. And then the region of birth of the foreign-born population, Language spoken at home. Geographic mobility tells us the percentage of people that live in the same household as a year ago. So 87% in Huntington Beach live in the same household as a year ago. About 8.2% is a different resident, same county. About 3% different county, same state, different state, and from abroad. Here's educational attainment, disability status, employment status, type of employees. As you know, this is a very extensive survey, similar to the long form that we collected between 1940 and 2000, every census, every decennial census. Again, you can look at the chart or you can look at a table by clicking here. Income, the income distribution between males and females, poverty and participation in government programs, health insurance coverage, population, and the age distribution, race and Hispanic origin, housing inventory characteristics. So again, this is a very detailed report, if you will, that you may or may not be aware. I think is really, really valuable. I do a lot of workshops for community-based organizations that sometimes are looking for grant money. And I believe this is a great resource to attach as an appendix. I'm not a grant writer, but I think this is a great tool to attach as an appendix to a grant proposal. So with that, I'm going to pause here and turn it over to, I believe, Carla.
I am here. Thank you so much for that presentation, Armando.
You're welcome.
So great to be able to share this tool. So welcome back, and we are going to launch a quick survey. It's the same drill as we did before. I'm going to put it in the chat. If you could jump in there and if you could answer this quick survey for us. I'm going to share my screen so that you can see the responses as they come in. So go ahead and answer. Take a minute to take that survey, please. I don't see. Oh, there we go. Okay, so it's starting to update with 2 responses. So, do you feel more confident about using census tools? Click on that link and let us know. Did this help you? Should we continue to do this these educational workshops for other? Okay, let's see. So, do you feel more confident about using census tools? 14 responses, so 70%. Let's give it maybe like 30 more seconds. If you could please click on that link in the chat and respond. We really need to know, how do we improve this? How do we make this information available to as many community partners as we can? All right, so I'm going to say that about 80% of people feel more confident after hearing Armando about their census tools and what's available. About 23% of you say maybe. That would be a good question to ask, why maybe? Has this given you ideas about applications for your organization? And we see that 76% of people said yes. So that's really exciting. 77 actually, changing. And how likely are you to contact a data dissemination specialist? 81%. That's great for us. We really hope that you do make that phone call and that or send that email and start getting that data about your region, as expanded as possible. How likely would you hold a data census workshop with your own groups? So we have 50% of you say that you're likely to do that. So you're going to be expanding this out into the communities, and 31% of you say need more information. So the good news about that is that we are going to hold a meeting with the Leadership Conference. We're going to have a track there in upcoming event, and we'll share more information as they share with us, their flyer and more information about it. But we're going to talk about, how can you get this this data workshop set up in a more easier way? What type of questions do you have? And also, how can you create a story with that data that then you can use in the future? So that DNA, data narrative action model that Karthik was talking about. And then finally, what specific data would you be interested in learning about? So here are our responses. How to read and interpret data, make it more accessible in translation, Native American in Montana, gentrification and displacement, disaggregating Asian American data. We're going to go right into that in a minute, and NHPI data and extracting data. So that's the survey's results. That's our exercise, and we are really thankful for you to going through it. We are excited that you learned something new and that you're more confident with your tools for census. So we're going to call Karthik back to the stage. He's going to be sharing with us. While we're waiting for him, I'm wondering, the people that said they need more information, maybe if you could raise your hand and share with us, what information do you feel we could add to this presentation, or what can we anticipate that would be helpful?
I was trying to dabble with the website and try to see how I could extract data. And I spent a lot of time, and I got some information like this. The only thing is the category that I'm interested in, possibly this is a format that's older and you would be updating it, but I wasn't able to just extract the data of the highlighted rows that you see. And I was wondering how it can be done, or is it not possible?
Okay. So Armando, I'm going to pass it on to you, and it's probably going to end with, we really hope you reach out to your data dissemination specialist and have a one-on-one talk with them about that. But go ahead, Armando.
Yeah, thank you. So I believe you're referring to when I show you on datacensus.gov how to highlight and select just portions of the data that you need. So again, you hold down your left mouse key, make the selection, is going to be highlighted in light blue, then right click on that selection, then you're gonna have a dialog box where you can actually get the entire data table, or you can copy with headers. Once you click on copy headers, open Excel, open an Excel program, and then paste it on a spreadsheet. And that's gonna show you the data that you selected along with the headings.
I see. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much for that clarification. So we see Karthik came back. Karthik, please go ahead and take it on. You're muted. Maybe we need to make you co-host, I believe, right?
Okay, I think you can hear me now. Hey everyone, my apologies. I got double booked on another meeting, but the key thing I want to say is please show up to the Census NAC meeting tomorrow, because it does look like there is some uncertainty in terms of when the detailed ethnicity data from the decennial is going to be released. So we got a preview of that as NAC members, but that is something that you will have a chance to learn more tomorrow, and then to submit a public comment by email. We'll be sending that out as an email today in terms of the instructions on how to do that. But I know that disaggregated data is so essential to our communities, so that's going to be critical. There is also a question about the ACS in terms of not only the 1 year, but future 5-year files and the quality of the data. That will be discussed on Friday. And the public comment period, those can be sent in advance, or you can dial in and offer your comments on Friday. So we'll be sending that information. And also we'll be following up on future training opportunities, specifically with the API data's tools, as well as tools for other communities of color. So thank you.
Okay, so I think that this is going to wrap up our presentation. Karthik, I don't think that there's anything else you wanted to for us to add. And I think that we have made sure that you are aware of the tools that are available. And these are just very selected tools that Armando has shared with you. We want you to know that the Census Bureau has tools for things like small businesses. There's something called the Business Builder, I believe. And just so many other tools. But it really takes that phone call and that email to your data dissemination specialist and creating a relationship with them. They're usually very knowledgeable about their regions because they see the data over and over and over. And then there are certain stories that the data can tell. Armando, I don't know if you can share with us before we leave that story you told us about Hero, where the type of things that you discover that you didn't know existed. What is that experience usually when you contact a data dissemination specialist?
So the Huron story that I mentioned earlier near Bakersfield, is that what you're referring to? Yeah, so I do a lot of presentations and usually pull data from the decennial census and the ACS that is relevant to the audience. I did, years ago, I did a presentation for a small community-based organization in Huron. Huron, California is a little town northwest of Bakersfield. And again, I pulled a number of characteristics, so marital status, educational attainment, poverty, health insurance coverage. The high school dropout rate for the little town was in the high 70s, I believe, if I remember correctly. And it was really surprising to me because I don't do a lot of research, but that was the highest that I seen back then. After my presentation, I asked the person in charge of that organization, why was the high school dropout rate so high in the little town? And she mentioned, well, there's a couple of factors. There's some political issues going on here. But the biggest one is we don't have a high school. We don't have a high school. We need to bus the kids. And this is in a rural area. We need to bus the kids about 20 minutes in a rural area. So it's quite far. And sometimes the parents don't want to deal with that. So they don't send the kids to school. And the little town is, stagnating. As an outside comment, I said, well, now you have objective data to show elected officials the need for a high school in your little town. Unbeknownst to me, I went to Fresno Office of Education months later, and I was doing a presentation similar to what I did in Huron. And I mentioned the Huron case, which I didn't know it was in their district. So when I mentioned that, they began to look across the table. And I thought it was maybe something I made a mistake or something that I said. But after the presentation, two ladies came to me and said, did you notice that when you mentioned Huron, people start looking across the table and say, yeah, this is what happened. And she says, well, we know that the problem exists. We just don't agree how we're going to fix it. And I said, okay, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just telling you what the data says. But what I'm trying to tell you is that there's so much richness in this data that you can make a case, because sometimes there's significant differences, not even at the county level. You get down into the census tract level and you see significant differences from one census tract to the next. And sometimes it's just separated by a freeway, by a highway. So again, this is just one example. There's so many ways that the ACS data is used. But yeah, that's just an example of it.
Right, and that's a conversation we want to continue at the Leadership Conference event. Talking about how do you create a narrative out of this data. What Armando just mentioned is not about just writing grants. It's not just about advocacy. It's, do you know where you live? Do you know your populations? Do you know the issues that are happening? And do you know your data? And do you know that, and most importantly, do you know the data that's missing? That's something that the Center for Social Innovation has really, filled a big gap here in our region, because as people, start doing advocacy and you start digging in, some of that data is not collected by the Census Bureau, it's collected by other entities. And sometimes it just does not exist. It's not collected by anyone, it's not tracked by anyone. So you can then point out, hey, this data is missing, and then work on advocacy around getting that data, because that's what's going to build your case for the next level, right? You really want to be building those databases and those examples and those case studies, and you want to start doing pattern. We want to start comparing what's happening in your region, what's happening in mine. How are you handling the rural broadband, divide? What type of data are you using? And when we center our community development work or our grant writing work or public policy work, when the conversations are centered around data, the conversations are richer, but they also skip a lot of steps. They take you to the point faster. One example, for example, that I experienced with Armando was we were doing a small presentation in Imperial County about the business builder tool. And we were doing it for the economic development teams of cities and just nonprofits. And as they were observing this information, they started having conversations about, the place. Yeah, I know that place. It never really, never really takes off. And then sometimes it does, but we don't know what to do with it. And then they started talking about food trucks. And then they said, we don't have any data about food trucks. And who keeps that data? So then the conversation was really about, there's a problem and should we be thinking about solutions and what data do we need for it? That was a very quick way for them to strike a conversation without even knowing each other in the same Zoom link. So that's the power of data that we hope you can unleash in your communities, but it all starts with creating your own trainings in your communities, which is what we're going to be talking about in the next time that we meet. We'll send you the follow-up. It'll be December 8th, I believe. Paola, if I'm wrong, let me know, but it's December 8th, I believe. And we'll be talking about, how do you make these cases and how do you continue to build on that narrative? So any last questions before we leave? We have about 3 minutes for any last comments, any observations you want to make. All right, we got some applause here. So that means it was good. All right. Well, we really, and you know what, I just realized that you cannot unmute because we would have to make you a co-host. So if you would like to say something, you would have to raise your hand. If you would like to raise your hand, I'll give it about 20 seconds so that you can think of a question and we can say goodbye with that question if needed.
I'm gonna leave you with one of my favorite quotes from a Swedish statistician that says, "It's easy to lie with statistics, but it's hard to tell the truth without them."
There you go. All right. Well, we are very thankful for your presence here. We hope that you help us get this information to your communities. We cannot do it without you. Just like we did census outreach, we cannot show these toolkits and census resources to your community members if it's not through you, the trusted messenger. So thank you for being here, for taking the time to learn. The hard work still ahead, making people care about data. And if you are going to advocate for ACS and decennial, remember that people don't fight for things that they don't care about. We need to make them value data and make it part of their daily lives. Make them understand it as this is us. It's telling our story, and we can use this to tell the story in our own way. That's the hope, so that then people can go in and talk about this information in a way that is relatable, but it's also impactful to their lives. That's why it is important that you get to see this data as something that's dear and near to you. Okay, I don't see any hands raised, and we're about a minute to go. So I'm going to give you a minute back and say goodbye. Thank you for being here. We will see you in December. Take care.